Good afternoon, my Real News Media TV family. Welcome back to the channel for another news update for November 3, 2023. And in the news this afternoon, new term limit proposed for IC Executive Director. The Integrity Commission Oversight Committee has proposed a 5-year term limit with a possibility of extension for no more than 3 years for the Executive Director of the Integrity Commission. At present, the Executive Director is appointed for a 5-year term with effectively uncapped eligibility for reappointment subject to a review process. But the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica and the Permanent Secretaries Board have both recommended limits to that tenure. At Thursday's meeting of the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee, Opposition Member of Parliament Julian Robinson suggested a single 7-year term with no option for renewal. Still, he questioned whether there was appropriate measures to hold the individual in that position accountable, arguing that this must be in place.
I don't know what exists in relation to the review of the performance of the executive director. I assume that the commissioners, I don't think it's stipulated anywhere. That is something that I believe we would need to look at, because while I'm all for the protection of the individual and the independence, it doesn't mean if somebody goes on a frolic of their own, either in terms of conduct or performance, that there are no ways to hold that person accountable.
However, government member Everald Warmington instead proposed that the current 5-year term be left in place, but the possible reappointment period be capped at no more than 3 years. He argued that this would give the Commission an earlier opportunity to remove a non-performing executive director.
So I would say we leave it as 5 years, and then it can be renewed for another 3 years. The issue is the commission might be stuck with someone who not really performing in a way they ought to for 7 years.
After further deliberation, Mr. Robinson relented.
I'm still with my 1 7-year term, but I would say if you're doing 5, it could only be one option for renewal and none other. My view on these things, which is not confined to this, I'm venturing a little outside the scope of this committee, but I would say similarly for an Auditor General, a DPP, I believe they must have fixed terms of office of somewhere between 7 and 10 years without any option for renewal. So if I'm going to alter my 1 7-year term, it would be 5 with only one option for renewal of maximum 3 years.
No significant earthquake damage to businesses, says the PSOJ. President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, Midday says that members of the business community, particularly those in the retail sector, are still tallying their losses following Monday's 5.6 magnitude earthquake. A number of retailers suffered damage to their stock during the quake, which mainly affected the eastern end of the island. But according to Mr. Siaga, the losses are not expected to be significant.
We do know that retail stores had lost some stock in trade, and other than that, there have been some minor damages to buildings which will need repairs. But I do not think that there is anything material that we certainly have heard from the business community that will increase cost or any other such thing. So I would say that I think we were lucky, we were fortunate. The only thing I would say is that we need to use the opportunity once again to revamp our evacuation exercises and drills and make sure that people are ready if we have an incident such as that or a worse one.
Several men detained for illegal gun at a party in Spanish Town. The Spanish Town police in St. Catherine on Thursday morning took several men, including a member of the entertainment fraternity, into custody in connection with the seizure of an illegal gun at a party. The police report that about 3:30 a.m., cops swooped down on the event called Pill Wednesdays in Spanish Town and conducted an operation. The police say a bag containing a Glock pistol was discovered. As a result, the men were escorted to the Spanish Town police station. Superintendent Hopton Nicholson, acting head of the St. Catherine North Police Division, said the police will continue its offensive against the criminal activities. He said that the police are taking a zero-tolerance approach to any illegal activities in Spanish Town. The identities of the men are being withheld pending further investigation. Rasta fined $38,000 for cocaine and ganja. A policeman had everyone in the St. James Parish Court laughing on Wednesday as he recounted a Rastafarian's hilarious explanation of how a package of cocaine got inside the turban he was wearing. The defendant, David Solomon, was fined $38,000 on charges of possession and dealing in ganja and cocaine and possession of uncustomed goods. According to court documents, police carried out an operation and went to Solomon's St. James residence on October 16. Several plastic parcels containing a total of 1.6 ounces of cocaine were discovered during a search of the premises, and another parcel was discovered in his turban. According to the investigating officer, Solomon's explanation for the cocaine in his turban was that it fell from his head as he was breaking up a fight, and he believed the package of cocaine got into the turban when he picked it up. Laughter erupted from those in the courtroom. The court was also told that a further search yielded several plastic bags with ganja weighing 8.7 ounces. According to the police, one of the parcels containing the cocaine also contained $200, while one of the parcels containing the ganja contained $200 as well. Police say 12 packages of uncustomed Sunny brand cigarettes were also discovered. "Mr. Solomon, do you take drugs?" Smith Ashley asked the accused man on Wednesday. "No, Your Honor," he replied. The judge then fined him $10,000 or 2 months in prison for possession of cocaine and $20,000 or 2 months in prison for dealing in the drug. Solomon was also fined $2,000 or 30 days in prison for ganja possession and $6,000 or 30 days in prison for dealing. No evidence was offered for the charge of selling the substance. He was admonished and discharged for the uncustomed cigarettes. Lawmakers at odds over 50-year mandatory minimum sentence. Despite the Joint Select Committee of Parliament agreeing to a mandatory minimum sentence of 50 years for capital murder, opposition Senator Donna Scott Motley has labeled the increase as extraordinary and repulsive. The committee has been considering the Criminal Justice Administration Amendment, Offenses Against the Person, and the Child Care and Protection Acts to determine the minimum sentence to be applied for both capital and non-capital murder. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck has stated that the government is responding to the mood of the public in relation to the sentences handed down to people convicted of murder. But Senator Scott Motley says 50 years is too long for a minimum sentence to be applied to a person convicted of murder.
A 30-year-old person who is sentenced is an 80-year-old man. And the burdens on the state of taking care of the elderly population in prison is going to be devastating because we're not equipped for it. Minister, there are so many people of that age who have every known physical condition to man. One has to take a holistic view of what one is trying to do. And whereas I know that the eye for an eye and the punitive aspect of it is compelling, I'm just saying that we should look at the consequences. I believe that the increase in these sentences are far too dramatic. I believe that the legislator has a role beyond responding to the public. I do believe that the legislator has a role in guiding public sentiment and explaining to the public what considerations are taken into account when they do this very important task. Indeed, I think the legislator and the public should also put themselves in the position of somebody about to be sentenced. That's the kind of balance that I think we need to have.
Still, Justice Minister Delroy Chuck was at the pains to defend the 50-year mandatory minimum sentence for capital murder.
My view is that it should be high, and the reason why it should be high, this one in particular, because we're dealing with capital murder. We can do a little with non-capital murder, but for capital murder, I think it should be high because the usual thing with capital murder is life imprisonment without parole. Why we should have that adjustment, that it could be a sentence with a number for parole, just in the event that a person pleads guilty, then the judge would be guided by what the minimum mandatory is in the legislation to reduce it. The judge might reduce it by 33 1/3% or 50% if the person plead guilty, depending on the nature and gravity of the offense.